Hey, David, appreciate you taking the time to join this podcast. I'd love it if we could start from the beginning. I'd love it if you could walk me through your journey in marketing.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, David. Love your podcast. Great to be here. So my journey in marketing started off, I was an engineer originally and moved across into product management and then
Okay.
from product management to product marketing. And this was at Oracle. And then kind of grew with the business as we built out what became known as Fusion and Fusion middleware. And we built all of that. And I ended up leading business development and marketing around the Fusion middleware platform for Europe. And then I left there and headed off to SAP, um, the big German software company,
Yeah.
and took a vice president role there in industry and solution marketing and ended up running various global functions. Then took a little bit of time at Salesforce here in the UK, and was the chief marketing officer for the UK and Ireland while I did my MBA, and then headed off to Google, and that was kind of my journey. After Google, as most people do, I went off and did a few startups, which was great.
Mhm.
And I'm currently the European Chief Marketing Officer at Wipro, the large Indian system integrator. So we deliver a lot of the infrastructure for many of the big brands across Europe. So started off as an engineer, business development, sales, moved more and more into marketing.
You mentioned obviously that you started off with engineering. Now you're in marketing. A lot of what I hear is the biggest thing with marketing now is that data side of things. How do you think your background in engineering to now going into marketing has supported your position in your career at Wipro now?
So I think one of the key things about marketing leaders is the world has changed. You need to understand the way data works, the way data is structured. You need to understand how AI works. You can't just kind of see it as a complete black box.
Mhm.
So you need to understand where your data is coming from, how it's going to go in there. You need to understand what your databases look like, and you need to understand what your MarTech stack looks like and how it works and how the web connects everything together in that way. So I find it's a skill that I use all day, every day, along with my kind of core marketing creative skills as well. So there's a kind of left brain and right brain balance
Mhm.
there that I think is really key for marketing leaders. Certainly going into 2025, that would be my top tip would be like build both sides of your marketing brain.
How do you balance the two? How do you yeah, how do you balance the two? Where do you find the information to develop the data driven side, but then also balance the creative side as well?
So, always read, always listen to podcasts, always attend events, always talk to people, join communities. Like you've got to be a fanatic about absorbing content. You've got to be fanatical about it. You need to understand and play with things. You can't just get team members to go to say, okay, go and investigate AI for me, for example. You've got to be in there using it and building it and like understanding how it works. And I think this is where a little bit of technical skill really, really helps. If you look now at large language models, so understanding how kind of prompt engineering works and how that fits together and what you need to do is key to then how you apply that to personalization inside your organization.
Definitely. I'd love to learn a bit more about Wipro's marketing strategy. We've spoken a
Sure.
bit about ABM before. I love it if you could just walk me through sort of the foundation of that and what criteria you use to identify target accounts as well.
So look, target account identification sits at the center. For me, my marketing philosophy is the customer always sits at the center. It's not the
Hmm.
product, it's not the service, it's not your organizational structure. It's not the thing that you most want to do, it's your customers. So put your customers at the center of everything you do. And it doesn't matter whether you're a tiny startup or a huge organization like Wipro,
Hmm.
you still put your customer at the heart. So we structure into different layers the different types of organization that we have. And we use geographical structures, we use industry structures, other firmographics and all of that as well around kind of, size, growth rates, the wide range of things. We then also look at companies that we're doing business with and where we have a relationship and where we're growing the account. And then companies where we think we want to break into the account. So, there's there's a blend there of these, and it's very easy just to think, okay, I'm going to target everybody on the planet with our message.
Mhm.
That doesn't work. We need to think about like, here's the companies that deliver a lot of revenue for us. Let's grow those accounts. Here's the companies that maybe we have a small foothold in, or we don't have any foothold, and we need to open the door. And then here's the kind of long tail of companies, which, to be honest, we're not really that bothered about. And when you think about ABM, we're thinking here around this like layered pyramid here of like, one to one to few, one to solution or one to field of play, and then one to industry.
Mhm.
So you've got this layering effect that your ABM strategy is built around. And the one additional thing that I'd throw in here is large deals can pop up at any moment. So you need to be ready for a pursuit after a deal. You're in competition with other folks. We've got a complex buying journey. We've got a big buying committee there. If a pursuit appears, marketing needs to apply ABM kind of skills and capabilities to making sure that pursuit gets landed and that you increase your win rate. So
When we're
yeah,
talking
it's layered, and then you've got the pursuit piece that comes in as well.
when you mention pursuit, what and investing in ABM, what does that look like from a more practical sense? Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, so I mean, without giving you like specific customer names, obviously, but
Hmm.
if you think about the kind of deals that we do, if we're looking at, a $50 million deal or $100 million deal, um, that kind of emerges from the work that we've been doing. And the way that we do our ABM is we focus on looking at the accounts that we're targeting, identifying the contacts inside those accounts and the activity and intent that they're showing using intent driving tools. And then we start to cluster them together and look for patterns inside of buying centers.
Hmm.
So if you think about this and kind of the idea of upper funnel is kind of fading away a little bit in B2B now. Um, if you look at what we're seeing, we see intent around a need coming in, and we'll start to kind of craft engagement. And then if something becomes concrete, and it may be that there's an RFP or an RFI or some other formal process kicks off, we then jump in and we'll look at mapping the buying committee. We'll figure out who's pro Wipro, who's neutral, who's against Wipro.
Hmm.
We'll then work with sales to help them identify, like, what can we do as marketing to try and turn some of the people that maybe aren't 100% for us? How can we support the people who do want to work with us? And the neutral folks, how do we bring them to our side? So it's kind of a little bit of a almost like a political policy kind of play that we've got there with these
Yeah.
big buying webs and influencing them.
And when you're talking about bringing someone that's neutral onto your side,
Yeah.
how does that? What's like a tactic that you deploy to do that?
So we use tools to apply AI to their web profiles. So, we'll look at their web profiles and we'll try and understand them as a persona.
Hmm.
And then we'll try and to understand them beyond the persona and as a person. It's really interesting when you talk to marketeers. Marketeers are hung up on this idea of, okay, let's map the persona and all personas are alike. They're not.
Hmm.
We're all people.
Yeah.
I'm a chief marketing officer. There's another chief marketing officer down the street. We're different people. We have different behaviors and different preferences. So we will use either Myers-Briggs or we'll use disc profiling to profile the person.
Hmm.
And we'll work with the sales teams then to actually validate those disc profiles and understand, has the scraping of the web that we've done using our AI kind of given us the right picture and given the tools that we've got? We'll adjust it to make sure that this like really fits into the picture that the sales teams have of the people. And then we'll use that to personalize either engagements or invitations or communication. If somebody's very introverted, you don't want to invite them to be on stage with you somewhere.
Sure.
You want to send them like a really great white paper that's thoughtful and is very personalized to their situation. If somebody is, loves being online, loves being in podcasts, loves being on stage,
Hmm.
is very extroverted, then you want to think about like, hey, can we just like bring them into some of the stuff we're doing? Can we make them a little bit famous?
Hmm.
You know, they're the kind of tactics that you want to think. And then obviously there's a huge tail there of different touches we can put in place, how we engage them, what moves the dial. And we'll speak to the sales teams, we'll 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 test things, we'll A/B test things with those folks. Do they even open our emails?
Hmm.
Sometimes organizations can get very tied up around, let's put an email cadence in place that applies to a persona, and we'll just
Sure.
beat that email cadence to death. If it's not working with the person, look at that, think about it, think about how you can change. This is account-based marketing. This is fundamentally one-to-one here. And
Hmm.
we need to be looking at the people as people and figuring out, why don't they even open our emails?
Hmm.
You know, why, when, we invite them to things, do they not respond? Like, what can we do? What can we try? Can we try different media types? Do we see that they've got a footprint anywhere on like other channels? Are there any communities they're part of? Do we have any executives or any contacts who have a relationship with them? In which case, it might be a person to person touch that we put in place. So there's all these different ways of doing it, and you just really need to figure out, does an email work for them? Do we need to contact our chairman and get the chairman to reach out and say, hey, we already have a connection. I'd love to get dinner or something. So there's a million different ways to do this, and that's what
Hmm.
we work out. That's our playbook, if you like.
I really appreciate that because it's really interesting. But I guess, how do you implement something like this at scale?
Yeah,
Because it seems like obviously, number one, like the account has to be worth it. It has to be one of your top accounts. It has to be someone
correct.
that you really want to break into. But what are the challenges you have when you're trying to implement
So
ABM at scale?
think about ABM at scale applying to the different types of it, the different layers of ABM, the one-to-one, the one-to-few, the one-to kind of solution. And then think about the pursuit. The pursuit you are going to put more money in because you have a qualified, you know, opportunity there, and there's a cost of sale associated with that qualified
Mhm.
opportunity. So, worthwhile putting the energy and the resources into doing that. So that's really important for you to figure out, like, do we need to spend money to win this, $100 million deal? It's worth spending some money. You
Yeah.
don't want to have zero budget on that. If it's more generic ABM, you need to kind of scope how much you're going to put into it, what the cost of sale is going to be for all of that. And then you need to think about how you put in place the right teams. So the way that we do it is we have an offshore team in India that is able to turn around particular actions for us very quickly. So we've got a bunch of really talented folks in Bangalore, um, who, they have an amazing menu of things that they can deliver for us, and they can do it very quickly. We then run sprints. So we run an agile marketing approach here in Europe where we run 30-day sprints with the account teams to say, look, here's the backlog of things we'd like to do. Here's the resource pool we've got available. Let's figure what we can get done in this 30 days. And then we reach the end of the 30 days. We do a retro in the same way that you would build software. And maybe it's coming back to my engineering heart here.
Mhm.
I'm running this like we're building software,
Yeah.
because what we're doing is we're building a relationship, we're building connection, we're moving the deal forward, we're trying to figure out how we get that buying group to a point where they make the right decision for us. So agile marketing, so many organizations do still do a very waterfall approach to marketing, where they put a marketing plan in place on Jan 1st and then they run that plan all year. It's like,
Yeah.
look, by February 1st, your marketing plan's kind of moved on. Things have happened, things have changed. You don't know like what the world's going to throw at you. Sure, you need some always on things that you're going to run. You need some air cover, but you've got to be agile. You've got to be able to respond to your offerings changing, the world changing, the economy changing, your customers changing.
Hmm. And when you think about having a more agile approach, it seems like technology would almost play a part in that to gather insight on what is moving the needle with your clients or your prospects as well. I'd
Yeah.
love to understand a bit more about what tools or technologies you're invested in and what you're looking at to support your ABM.
So we're kind of running now a move into Sixth Sense to drive intent.
Hmm.
So that kind of tool set for me, and that looking at intent inside accounts is really, really key. So we map out intent signals across our target accounts based on this structure that I've already described.
Hmm.
We then gather them together and profile them using different types of AI tools, things like XIQ. And then we pull that data down into Salesforce and we bring it together. And I think one of the big changes we've made this year, and one of the things that's really moved the dial for us, is the idea of moving away from marketing qualified leads to marketing qualified accounts.
Sure.
So, what we're doing here, instead of sending, here's a lead, catch this sales guy,
Hmm.
and the sales guy or girl will then go, yeah, they didn't respond to my outreach. We're moving into more partnership with sales. We're saying, look, we're seeing intent signals across this account. Here's the buyers that we're seeing. Here's the other things they've been doing on the web. Um, Looking across, both the first party and zero party data that we have and the other data that we can get from those intent platforms and pulling them together and looking for patterns. So looking, using things like LinkedIn Sales Navigator inside marketing is a really powerful technique because
Hmm.
you can look at the folks that are there, how they're connected, and you can start to map those links before you hand it across to sales. So, some of the sales capabilities moving up the funnel into marketing here.
Hmm. No, that's interesting, and I guess from that, obviously, we use technology to sort of map out the buyers to see the intent, and then almost when you're breaking into these people, they are people like you mentioned, you and the CMO down the street. You're both CMOs, but
Yeah.
you have different personalities. How do you integrate events into building that personal connection with your prospects?
So look, there's lots of ways to do events. You can have like a huge wide ranging event, lots of streams, lots of content and thought leadership. You can have very intimate events, somewhere like Davos. So we're currently planning for the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland. You can do roundtables. You can work with organizations that have great communities.
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of all of these things. I particularly like the community-based approach. So when you can find a group of like-minded people that your targets are kind of engaged in, and you can then do something and they can be with other like-minded folk and learn from them, instead of me selling to you,
Hmm.
you're listening to what your like-minded colleagues are talking about and you're learning from them. And that word of mouth recommendation, and I know it's a little old school, but like word of mouth is more and more powerful in this
And
situation. So, we're using AI to personalize content and messaging, sure. But then we're bringing people back into the picture because the automated digital side of things, you know, people know that this stuff's automated. They recognize it. You can recognize kind of stuff that's kind of, there needs to be a word for this, like to AI.
yeah.
What's the kind of AI overload piece that we're getting into here? And I see it all the time. I get all this stuff coming into me in email, in LinkedIn, etc. And it's not generated by a person, so I don't respond to it.
Yeah.
It's literally it's some kind of cadence that a tool has put in place. So like if it's a tool or an AI that's put it in place, there's no need for me to respond. If it's a person, particularly if it's a person I know
Hmm.
who's reached out and said, "Hey, David, like, could you talk to me about this? I need some help on this thing." Then I will respond back to them because people build relationships and maintain them. So yeah, the events could be as small as getting somebody to do like to reach out and have like a coffee with somebody, all the way up through communities, roundtables,
Hmm.
big events that are out there. We also do a lot with our partners as well. So we have a big kind of alliance engagement here with Amazon, with Microsoft, with Google, Salesforce, ServiceNow, etc. So we will work with them on their strategies. So we'll kind of parallelize on those things.
Something that I hear quite often is sort of post-event engagement and the
Yeah.
difficulty with with okay, fine, you have a few prospects at an event, you've spoken with
Mm.
them, and then you almost send a generic AI email, thank you for meeting us, or something like that. How do you deal with that, and how do you ensure that there's momentum gained from the insights that you've gathered at the event?
So I think it's polite to send them a follow-up. I think it should be personal.
Hmm.
It needs to come from a person and it needs to look like it came from a person. It needs to look not like it came from an AI. If someone sends me an AI follow-up with please book a meeting here, I'm probably not going to do that. If
Yeah,
it's a person, I'm going to take the time to respond. And you almost need to add in things you wouldn't see in an AI. So imperfections and, human touches. As people, we can read AI content and it's useful for us and it's powerful. But often you want to know, I need a signal in there that this has come from a person and a
hmm,
person, hopefully, that I know. You know, if you and I were at an event together and I send you a short email afterwards saying, hey, thanks for showing up at the event, really, enjoyed your commentary, you know, should we get together for a coffee sometime? In a
yeah,
simple kind of thing like that. If it's kind of a much more formal kind of piece with a click here to book a meeting, I'm just
yeah.
not going to do that.
No, of
I'm sure
course,
you get those things all the time. That idea
100%.
of a cadence, or an email flow, it's going to work in a small number. If someone's ready to go, then sure.
Hmm.
But actually, that personal touch is what I like. I think the other thing that I think about here is gathering data from people when you hear what it is they're looking for and making sure you store that, what we call zero party data, rather
Hmm.
than just here's my first party data of their name, their email address, etc., and their opt in. I want to store data around, hey, they're really interested in doing these particular things. They're in this industry. They've used these tools before. This was, their experience wasn't great with this other tool because of this reason. So, like, how do we gather and structure that data? Because that can then feed the kind of personalization that the tools can drive if you can have an appropriate kind of metadata structure underneath that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you actually gather that zero party data. Is it the case that the sales team is speaking to them and you're taking notes on your CRM, or is there an offline way of finding these things out?
This is all going into CRM and is being rolled through then into kind of data that will augment the large language models. So we
Hmm.
use RAG as a technique to add in data into those. If you think about it, if I'm going to take ChatGPT or Gemini or one of the other large language models and use it to generate something, it hasn't got my context. So what I need
Yeah,
to do is add context in on the front of that. And if we're saying here's a customer, we want to create this kind of thing, here's the context, you get much better results coming out of it. The tooling generates much better results when you've got your own, first party, zero party, second party data sitting there in front of the AI and actually allowing you to do that. And then it's really, really key that a person looks at it after it's been generated.
yeah,
So AI needs to be thought of as a productivity tool that a person there, here's my first draft. Someone smart then looks at it and goes, yeah, I'm going to change a few things here because it reads weird. And I'm going to
yeah.
make it feel like it came from me. And I'm going to proofread this thing. I'm not going to write it from scratch, but I am going to put the energy into proofread it. I'm not just going to send this stuff automatically.
It's funny because I get these emails all the time, and maybe on my Twitter or something I posted about being an Arsenal fan. So then I
Yeah.
get an email saying, "Hey David, saw you're an Arsenal fan. Want 5 new clients every month." It's
Yeah.
like, what's the relevance here? But it makes
I
sense
had
when
one
you're
today about West Ham. Same thing. You're a
right.
West Ham, and I'm not a West Ham fan. I'll tell you a funny story just as a side thing. So, our wonderful friends up at Manchester United recently sent me a package, and it came to our office, and the office contacted me and said, "You got a package here?" And I said, "Yeah, can you open it and take a look?" Because I get a lot of stuff just randomly sent to me.
Sure.
And they said it's a Manchester United shirt, and I said, I'm from Liverpool. Like, why would I want a Manchester United shirt? Like, how can that even be a thing? They haven't
Oh
even looked
my.
as to where I was born and came from. Um, and they said, well, what shall I do with it? And I said, as people leave the office or come into the office, ask them what team they support, and the first person that says Manchester United gets the shirt. So I don't even know who got it. So thank you to Manchester United marketing team. Somebody in the Wipro organization is very happy with this shirt, but I'm from Liverpool rather than Manchester.
Are you a red or blue?
Red.
Okay. My business partner wouldn't be too happy. He's from the Wirral, massive.
Well, I'm from the Wirral as well, so I'm from,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I'll put you two in contact.
We probably went to school together.
Yeah, maybe. I guess from that, it's quite interesting. You bring up a mistake someone made. They sent you a Man United shirt. I'd love to know what other common mistakes you see from B2B marketers and what mistakes you see them making today.
So I think automation around, trying to find these personal touches and then just bulk automating rather than checking anything. So
Mhm.
people, AI makes you lazy sometimes, and you just send everything out hoping that you'll get like a 2% return rate or a 1% or a 0.5%. I think to me, the biggest mistake marketeers make is not looking at the ones that don't respond.
Right.
So, if you think about it, if I send out 1,000 emails in an automated way and I get like, 20 people respond to the emails,
Mhm.
that's really not a good outcome for me. I need to be looking at like, okay, why didn't the others even open those mails? Like, what's the strap line like on the mail? Like, what does it really look like? Has anyone looked at this? And it's interesting with kind of AI and the tools and the data that we've now got. Marketing needs to do more work, not less. I know there's a general sentiment that marketing will be replaced by AI. I don't see that happening because the AIs are fighting with each other and they're lifting the quality. So marketeers as people need to think about creativity. They need to think about engagement. They need to look at the data. They need to be smart about like what didn't work in this picture rather than just optimizing for these tiny conversion. It's a bit like spam emails you get,
Yeah.
offering you some money from, I don't know, Nigeria or
Yeah.
something, who's died. They're getting 0.0001% return on those things, but they're still spamming them out. We need to not do that,
Mhm.
particularly B2B clients.
No, absolutely. And I guess from that as well, what strategies are you seeing as ineffective or not yielding the expected
Bulk,
results?
bulk email, like
Just
you
bulk
need to
emails.
be thoughtful about your emails. Like the strategy of we're running an event and we haven't got enough people signed up. Let's email our whole database again.
Yeah.
See if we can get, because I've got some small KPI. You're burning your brand at that point.
Hmm.
So the key strategies that aren't working are the ones that damage your brand. So you're extracting value from your brand and you're degrading your brand. So you need to
Hmm.
think about the cost of that degrading that you're doing there. And sure, sometimes you might say, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. Most times I would say think carefully about the balance between brand and demand and how they act like a staircase. You go up with demand, you go across with brand, you go up with
Hmm.
demand. If you're just using one of those vectors, then you're not going to move in the right direction. So you need to really think about how you bring them together and how you preserve the quality of your brand and how you kind of avoid putting poor content out, saying things that are dumb, spamming people, doing all of those kind of things. Your brand is the thing that you've got to preserve, that you've got to really treasure.
This is something that I've discussed actually at length with quite a few marketers is balancing demand generation and brand. And it seems like there's almost always pressure from someone that maybe doesn't sit in marketing
Yeah.
that wants those quicker results with demand generation. How do you explain the value of protecting your brand to stakeholders that internal stakeholders that aren't necessarily sat in marketing?
Yeah. Okay. So the CMO and the CFO and the chief sales officer or CRO, they always have a strained relationship.
Hmm.
You know, finance is trying to reduce costs to maintain margin. Sales is trying to deliver revenue or bookings. in the short term. Marketing is trying to drive a long-term position and support the short-term kind of
Mhm.
metrics. One of the things here is about thinking about what are your objectives and key results, your OKRs, rather than your KPIs. So that's the way that I tend to do it, to try and socialize up front. These are the areas we're focusing on. We are guardians of these things. We're guardians of the customer. We're guardians of our brand. We're guardians of the culture that we're portraying here. And we're putting all of these things together. The sales teams will generally agree with you on these things, and then they'll chase revenue for the end of the month. They'll be
Mhm.
like, okay, I've got to close this thing. It's got to close. Sometimes it's okay not to close deals. If the deal in the long term is going to damage you, don't close it. Think about
Mhm.
closing deals that really will move the organization forward rather than just kind of pay a bonus to a salesperson. So to me, this is about the relationship. It's about marketing sitting at the top table. It's about marketing being strong and articulate and being able to explain things. And then also marketing not using marketing language in those meetings. Marketing teams get pushed out of those meetings when they focus on abstract concepts that are internal marketing measures like reach, etc.
Right.
Click-through rate and those sort of things. Sales doesn't care about those metrics. You've got to articulate it in the language that lands with both your other C-suite leaders and senior leaders, that senior leadership team, and also with your board and your investors as well. You've got to be
Mhm.
able to get in there and articulate this to them, because if they don't believe in it, they're going to push to cannibalize the brand as well.
From a tactical perspective, you mentioned sitting at the table with the other executives as well.
Mm.
What are some tactics to improve alignment between marketing and the rest of the organization?
I really like this idea that's kind of becoming more prevalent of intent and marketing qualified accounts.
Okay.
So, if you think about this, if I'm going to go to a sales leader and say, here's a lead, will you follow up on this lead? Sure, they'll look at it and they might follow up. If I go to them and say, here's an account where we're seeing intent within this buying center, and I've got 15 people here who've engaged, and this is how they've engaged, and this is their personality types and what we're seeing, I've done a lot of the work for them
Mhm.
already. They'll look at this and they'll say, okay, this is interesting. What intelligence do we have from the advisory channel, maybe from the alliances channel? So we need to pull those things in as well. So if we say, look, an external advisor is giving us a whisper that there's something going on here. We've spoken to Microsoft and they also are being engaged. We've pulled all this stuff together. You're giving them a 360-degree view. So you've got this kind of almost 360 marketing view around account.
Mhm.
And that is the thing that the salesperson will then take. And then you ride alongside the salesperson. You're still there. You don't give it to them and walk away.
Appreciate that. Something that I've seen and something that you've mentioned as well is
Mm.
improving your own skills, your team skills too. And I've seen that your collaboration with the Google Digital Academy. Could you talk to me a bit more about that, please, and how that's helped improve yourself and your team skills too?
So when I was at Google, we had a fabulous facility called Google Digital Academy, or the GDA, a great bunch of folks. And what we did there was educate our clients and educate our partners, excuse me, and educate the internal audiences on a whole range of things. Working at Google, customers would come to you and they'd say, hey, we want to be more like Google. We want to kind of understand, how we can do this. Do we just allow dogs in the building and like have a ball pit and some good food? And the reality is each organization is different. A little bit like we spoke about, each person is different. Each organization has a different culture, different set of values,
Mhm.
different background and nuances. What we would do at the Digital Academy was teach people how to adopt more agile thinking, put in place the idea of constant learning, put in place ideas such as, celebrating safe failure in your
Mhm.
organization. Many organizations don't like failure at all. Failure is essential for your organization to grow, but you need to do it safely. You need to be thinking about, okay, how do we experiment and how do we move down a path of experimentation to discovery without damaging ourselves? So you don't do crazy stuff, but you've got to fail. So there's this kind of
Mhm.
like balance. So we would, my role there at Google around the Digital Academy, we would kind of put together programs. A lot of very talented folks there building curriculum um, for clients and helping educate them and understand how to use Google's tools, and how to use digital better, but also how to change culture and how to move culture in an organization.
David, really appreciate your time on this one. I learned a lot from that. Thank you so much. So